awakens a Buddha right here. This Buddha, the source of compassion. This Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, just compassion. Thus the pure heart always rejoices. In the light recalls it, in the dark recalls it. Moment after moment, the true heart arises. Time after time, there is nothing but this absorbing world sounds awakens the Buddha right here. This Buddha, the source of compassion. This Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, just compassion. Thus the pure heart always rejoices. In the light recalls it, in the dark recalls it. Moment after moment, the true heart arises. Time after time, there is nothing but this.
Thank you, Helen. Are you able to hear me? Okay, thanks. So, hello, everyone. It's a joy to be with you on this second day of Rohatsu Sesshin at MKZC 2020, a heightened time for practice, a gift in the midst, fully immersed. Ruben asked me to speak today about Mu, a traditional point of return, always beginning, always now. I was so glad to be able to hear Ruben's talk yesterday, inviting us into the joy of being authentic, inviting us to open our hearts to what is, to open up and unveil what is in each of us from the start. What is that? In a word, Mu. A couple of weeks ago, Henry Schuckman, the guiding teacher at Mountain Cloud Zen Center, offered a talk on Mu. Somewhere in the talk, he quoted the Theravadan abbot and author Ajahn Sumedho giving practice instruction. Sumedho addressed his students, "For minds obsessed by compulsive thinking and grasping, simplify your practice to just 2 words. Let go. Just let go." Sumedho went on, "Every time I tried to figure things out or understand, I would tell myself, just go back to let go. Just be an earthworm," he said, "who knows only 2 words. And then he said, we are practicing lesser vehicles in, that's Theravada. So we only have this poverty-stricken practice, these 2 words. At that point, reading from this passage, Henry looked up from the page with a hint of a grin We've got practice with only one word. All you have to do is mu, mu. Find your home in mu. Open, unveiled, your own heart. What a vast home and intimate, exactly where you are. Last Saturday, Jan Chosen Bay's cohabitive Great Vow Monastery in Oregon offered the talk. Many of you heard it. She spoke about this time, this year, as a time of COVID conversion, a reckoning with what truly matters and with what it is to be human. Mu invites a mu conversion, a radical opening of the heart, the true heart, the entire heart. What if our hearts were to break all the way open? Is there any boundary that can withstand that? Any division that holds sway? When every boundary is gone, what remains? Nothing but mu. So mu, or Joshu's dog, is the first case in the Mumonkan, or gateless gate. Not unlike the head case in the transmission of light, that collection of transmission stories that begins with the awakening of Shakyamuni Buddha, case 0. I have heard Reuben call mu ground 0, case 0. So just a word about the Mumonkan. The 13th century master Mumon Wumen compiled this collection, adding a commentary and a verse to each case. A recent translation by the scholar-poet David Hinton renders the title No Gate Gateway, Mumonkan. The word kan means gate. It also means barrier. Unmon, he's the only master who shows up in the koans more than Joshu. Unmon is famous for using this word in his teaching to wipe everything away. Whatever we think we know, kan. Whoever you think you are, kan. Whatever ground you have to stand on, kan. So it's possible the title of this collection is what happened to Mumon. In effect, what he realized, Mumon kan, a true conversion. Mumon said he used the koans as brickbats to knock at the gate. Years ago, I was at a session, this one in Germany, where at the end we were all gathered around as we do here, and laughing and dancing and picture taking. And this lovely German man that at the time I'd only been in session with, I didn't know him yet. He said, "Don't just knock on the door, pound on it." He said, "Here we are." It's like, God. After many years, Gerhardt said, he realized there was a key in the latch all along. Or as Rumi put it, I have lived on the lip of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens. I've been knocking from the inside, knocking from the inside. Key in the latch. Mu is often likened to a master key, and it's not just in the latch, it's in your hands. Fall in love with Mu. Mumon says he didn't put the koans together in any particular order, but based on the power of his own experience, he put Mu first. He prefaced it with this verse. The great way has no gate. There are 1,000 different roads. If you pass through this barrier once, you will walk independently in the universe. That's Mumon's way. One of those roads, those 1,000 different roads, is right where you are. Sitting, listening on Zoom, offering yourself to this practice, offering your practice to one another. Sorry, just a moment. Sorry for that interruption. So just to say, returning to this verse, Mumon is pointing to this place exactly where we are. We think that awakening is something out there to get, but it's going on. Pass through this single gate, the gateless gate of your own heart mind, and you will move about in undivided freedom. Your practice will be at an end. Most people who glimpse Mu, however deeply, are compelled to say, now my practice can begin. This happens again and again. The horizon always opening, coming up now. Now my practice can begin. So let's begin. In case we think anyone has ever heard this before, God. Joshu's dog, the case. A monk asked Joshu in all earnestness, does a dog have Buddha nature or not? Joshu said, Mu. It's impossible to face this case without meeting up with Joshu. I remember a session once where the teacher asked, why do you practice? And one student said, Joshu is still sitting. I cannot but sit. At Rohatsu, we can affirm this living tradition. Shakyamuni Buddha is still practicing. We know Joshu's story, which alone has a power and of clarity, simplicity, warmth even. 100 years of zazen during his lifetime. And this tremendous power of his continuous practice. Jan Chozen read us that beautiful passage from Continuous Passage is the Circle of the Way. 100 years and still practicing. 8th century master supposedly lived, it's documented inscribed on the wall. China, he lived 120 years. Deeply awakened at 18 more experiences, powerful experiences, countless others. Practiced under Nansen for 40 years. Nansen died when Joshu was about 57. Joshu did the traditional mourning period and then began going around on pilgrimage. Some 20 years of visiting masters, checking and clarifying his heart, his world. At 80, he settled down in a small temple named Kanonji for Kanzeon. Our Maria Canon has such affinity. Joshu began to teach. His teaching came to be called Lips and Mouth Zen. When he spoke, a sparkling light came from his lips, some say a golden light. He was an old man, it would have been soft spoken. Joshu's named for the place of his temple. Over the years, repeatedly destroyed and rebuilt. I had this great chance to visit there a while ago. And just to be struck by the luminous quality, this light, this energy. It calls to mind the qualities the sutras name when they speak about this still sitting. Peaceful, enlivening, energizing, subtle energy, joy, release. Let go. Nothing but move. A monk asked Joshu in all earnestness. This line, this phrase, earnestness, to ask in all earnestness, is the beginning and the end of the Mumonkan. In 48 cases, that attitude, that disposition of asking shows up 14 times, 4 times in exchanges with Joshu. Earnestness, sometimes rendered sincerity. Your own true heart. We can trust it and entrust ourselves to it. This longing for authenticity. It's what brings us here. It's also possible for it to get misconstrued. I appreciate how we've been talking about this lately. This gaining idea. What if I don't get it? There's the question, at what point do earnestness and sincerity cross over into that thought of gain? When we mistake this state of openness, ripeness, of beginner's mind, purity of heart, as a step on the way to attaining something. When we give credence to our aching sense of lack and look to this practice to fix us, make us whole, there really is nothing to gain, nothing to add. I'm really fond of this chapter in the Shobogenzo Dogen. I'll try to be brief. I know I've said this before. Chapter is called It, or Thusness. You know, it's this. But the chapter speaks to sincerity. And there Dogen says, although the state of sincerity does exist, it is not something that lingers in the vicinity of the personal self. So there is this quality of sincerity, but actually it's not your doing, it's who you are. It's not just honesty, completely open and unaffected. It's us as we are without any attempt to disguise ourselves, this unveiled sincerity, including setting aside the ways we usually disguise ourselves to ourselves. Thusness or suchness for Dogen is what you are. Vast, boundless. He uses this phrase, before knowing, and absolutely personal, distinct. Without separation and inseparable from you. He writes, it is never separate from anyone. Thusness is always exactly where you are. And then he goes on, once the aspiration to awaken arises, you let go of what you have been playing with. You come forward to hear what you have never heard and realize what is not yet realized. This is not at all self-doing. Know that it is so because you are a person of thusness. You are that. So is the same time that we earnestly seek, we can't do anything. What a relief. Get out of the way. And all that's left is this pure heart. The heart we've been chanting about in our boundless compassion. Pure, joyful, true self, eternal, another translation says. Original purity. Elaine McGinnis Roshi called it original spontaneity. We're also inclined to call it love. This origin point. Dogen writes, just one more word. One who aspires to experience thusness is immediately a person of thusness. If so, why be worried about thusness? can't fall out of it. Why worry? Just to ask is to be in accord with the matter which is it. Such utter sufficiency, this capacity. What is that matter? Mu. In this case, nothing but mu. A monk asked Joshu in all earnestness, does a dog have Buddha nature or not? Joshu said, mu. If you've been given this koan, you've likely been advised to dispense right away with discursive thinking. Let go the monk's question and just sit with mu. Maybe you were told mu is the sharpest sword, the sword that cuts through all delusion, the sword that kills and gives life. Maybe you were told this sword is now in your hands. When this was offered to me, it seemed an incalculable gift. Maybe because I'd read just enough to appreciate the historical plumb line, or maybe the moment was lit by a sense of the magnitude of possibility, the aliveness of the exchange. What is mu? Nothing but mu. For about a week, I thought of mu day and night, picking apart the question, does a dog have Buddha nature or not? Those bones are soon clean. What is mu? What is mu? Sometime on day 7, I was sitting in my car at a stoplight on the way home from work. What is mu? What is mu? And I realized I was giving myself a terrible headache. It stopped. The question went silent. Just mu. An instruction that I've heard and often related to this gift, this gem, the gate of this koan, is to drop any concern with the dog or Buddha nature or even our fundamental questions. Who am I? What is this life? What is it to be authentically human? Drop the figuring and become intimate with the sound. Just mu. Let mu pervade. Let mu occupy everything. Let mu do everything. Whatever arises, mu has the capacity to handle it. I've mentioned this before, but years ago, when Joan Reek was giving sesshin for MKZC, Ruben and family were in Japan. And in one of her talks, she described a student who had been at a 7-day session, and it had been, a really solid, quiet, deep session, very steady. The session ended. He said, thank you, went home. Next day, got up and went to work. And that evening, he sent Joan an email saying, All these things were happening, but no one is doing anything. All day long, all these things happening, and no one doing anything. Be intimate with Mu. Master Jiso met the wandering monk Hogan at the gate. This iconic exchange. What is pilgrimage? Jiso asked. I don't know, said Hogan. Then Jiso, not knowing is most intimate. Taste that. This. It's always now. And not knowing is innate to it, alive in it. No basis for judgment, nothing to compare. This practice takes our inner critic offline. Whatever comes up, just that, just that. Mu. Does a dog have Buddha nature or not? The question is itself quite beautiful. This monk is soaking in the thing he seeks. Does a dog? The question itself is Mu, and Mu is a way to realize it. Monk, Mu. Dog, Mu. Buddha nature, Mu. If there's one thing to entertain about this question, it's that every aspect of it is you. Intimately, immediately, you. In another of the recorded exchanges with Joshu, a monk asks, what is the one word? Joshu said, if you hold on to one word, it will make an old woman of you or an old man of you. Instead, Joshu gives us one word that we cannot hold on to. Mu is so expansive, so exhaustive, nowhere to get a grip. One more passage from Dogen. This is Guidelines for Studying the Way. Very short. A monk asks Joshu, does a dog have Buddha nature or not? Joshu said, Mu. Dogen writes, can you appreciate this Mu? Can you contain it? There is no place where you can get hold of its nose. There is entirely nothing to hold on to. Please try releasing your hold. And releasing your hold, only look. Let go. Let Mu see. See with the eyes of Mu. This calls up a line from the Song of the Grass Hut, a verse by Sekito. He wrote, let go of hundreds of years and relax completely. Open your hands and walk innocent. One story that is so touching is from a Catholic sister who sat long and earnestly with Mu. When Mu broke open, she went to her teacher and said, I am innocent. original spontaneity, original love. Cut off the mind road completely, says Mumon in his commentary on Mu. Drop all concepts, even the concept of dropping all concepts. That's one approach. I've heard it said, delete, delete, delete. Or we could say, let go, empty your hands, relax completely. Completely. But don't let up. Another way is to allow whatever comes up. Just notice and give it some space. Or yet another, look into what you see until what you don't see falls away. Let Mu come forth and let everything else recede. This solvent Mu with the potency of an atomic kernel. Tiantong Rujing has a kind of famous teaching about Mu, where he likens it to an iron broom. It says we sweep and sweep and sweep. And the more we sweep our thoughts away, of course, the more they just come, the more they collect. And he says, finally, the broom breaks in two. It breaks into vast emptiness, he says, and you instantly penetrate the myriad differences and thoughts and variations of the universe. The broom breaks, and this little separate self dissolves. In some way, you disappear. Then one step, one sound, one gesture, and Wu breaks forth in that great freedom, in infinite variety. That's the way I move for Rujing. The Genjo Koan in Dogen, this famous line, he turns it around. That the self comes forward to realize the myriad things is delusion. That the 10,000 myriad things come forth to realize the self is awakening. Let Mu penetrate you. I think Dogen is the only of the masters who says what Mu is. Mu is a sun with stone melting power. Mu melts mountains. Mu melts the crust around our hearts, the entanglements in our bellies. Mu melts the imagined boundaries, the conjured judgments. When everything melts away, what then? Melt into Mu. We can't make this surrender happen, but we can dispose ourselves to it. Just let go. Release the calculus. Let go the judgment and sit. Let Mu sit. Mumon offers a kind of roadmap for Mu in his commentary on this case. And I'd like to read you David Hinton's translation. But let all the delusions of a lifetime go, all the understanding and insight, and slowly, little by little, nurture the simplicity of occurrence appearing of itself. Soon, inner and outer are a single tissue. Such a beautiful image of who we truly are. So I'd just like to close by sharing something. Yesterday, I received an email from a longtime Zen practitioner in Mexico City. 40 years of earnest practice, alongside being a Tai Chi master. He and his family have been barely hanging on, really. Mexico City, they've had these horrific earthquakes and now COVID. I'd like to just share an excerpt from his message, and this is with permission. This was during one of his Tai Chi classes yesterday. I was practicing and teaching via Zoom, and for a moment, I felt really strange. His English is. First of all, I was watching and turning around at the screen to see my students in the Zoom room. And for about the time the routine lasts, about 7 minutes, suddenly a great hush came into myself, and I was like opened into everything, like if I had vanished. The sensation was incredibly quiet and serene, feeling that all my body was not my body, and at the same time having a complete feeling of my body. Listening to my breathing was like if I was just the breath, or like in the breathing. I felt like a joyous belonging sensation, and some tears came into my eyes. This came just as I was talking and giving directions to my students in a very non-planned or spontaneous way. Obviously, during this experience, he writes, I noticed that I wasn't speaking anymore for a while, just moving, feeling, and I don't know how to say it, being the experience. This experience, as well as I might recall and share it with you, makes me feel like nothing was missing or needed in my life for that moment. Then, as the experience faded, I came into my awareness, if I may say it so, and then again saw my students moving in the Zoom room screen. I didn't want to talk at that time, but I had to because the Zoom class wasn't over. So I told my students that we should repeat the routine again. The class went on as normal, but I was all day long in inner calm and with a deep sense of well-being. A little more, he says, since that day, I have found myself being more detached to problems that arise in my life. I tend to accept even more openly whatever people have to say or think about me or my job. I feel more alive and at the same time more present in my life. Also, I've realized that I'm more sensitive, easy to cry or laugh. That's it. The message included an expression of deep gratitude, not only for this experience, but for this life, just as it is. He also expressed a commitment, all the more, to take care of others, to offer himself as best he can. So I think I'll stop here and thank you for your offering. As Jan said to us on Saturday, Your practice affects the whole world, whether we know it or not. So in gratitude, let's go straight on.